As he walked through a plaza, the millionaire froze upon hearing the street performer's music, the same song his daughter used to sing before she disappeared 20 years ago. The afternoon sun bathed Madison Square in golden light, a perfect September day in New York City. Richard Callahan walked briskly through the park, his tailored suit and confident stride marking him as a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms. At 48, his salt and pepper hair and the fine lines around his eyes spoke of experience. But there was something else there too, a persistent shadow that 19 years hadn't managed to erase. His phone buzzed, another acquisition offer needing his approval. Richard reached into his pocket but froze mid-motion. A melody floated through the air, delicate yet distinct amid the city's cacophony. His hand trembled as he abandoned his phone and turned toward the sound. A young woman sat on a park bench, guitar in hand, her voice clear and sweet as she sang. Pedestrians tossed dollar bills into her open case, but Richard couldn't move. It wasn't her voice that paralyzed him. It was the song, "Golden sun on silver streams, where my little boat still dreams." The world around him dissolved. The song, that particular song with those particular words, he hadn't heard it in 19 years, not since the day his 6-year-old daughter Valerie had disappeared from their Texas ranch, singing it as she skipped toward the garden where she would vanish without a trace. Richard's fingers instinctively closed around the silver pendant in his pocket, a tiny crescent moon with a star, the last birthday gift he'd given her before she was taken. The only thing found near the garden gate after she disappeared. The young woman looked up as his shadow fell across her. She was beautiful, with expressive brown eyes and a gentle smile, maybe 25 years old. "That song," Richard said, his voice barely a whisper. "Where did you learn it?" She stopped playing, her expression turning curious. "I'm sorry. That song. Where did you learn it?" She shrugged, a puzzled smile crossing her face. "I don't really know. I've been singing it since I was little. It's the only thing I remember from before everything went dark." Richard's heart hammered against his ribs. "What's your name?" "Stella." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so achingly familiar it stole his breath. "At least that's what they called me at the orphanage. I never knew my real name." "How old are you, Stella?" If she found his question strange, she didn't show it. 25? Richard did the math quickly. 25 now, 19 years since the disappearance. 6 years old then. The numbers aligned perfectly. "Do you remember anything from your childhood before the orphanage?" A shadow crossed her face. "Sometimes I dream of a big garden with red roses and a stone fountain, and I hear a man's voice calling me, 'My little light.' But the doctors said it's probably just my imagination creating memories I never had." Richard's legs nearly gave out. He'd called Valerie, "my little light," since the day she was born. Would you mind showing me something?" With trembling fingers, he pulled out the silver pendant. Stella's eyes widened before she even touched it. Tears welled up and spilled down her cheeks. Her hand moved instinctively toward the pendant, then stopped, hovering in the space between them. "I don't understand why I'm crying," she whispered, confused. "But I feel like I've seen this before, like I know it somehow." Martha Green hummed softly as she arranged fresh flowers in the foyer of Callahan Ranch. At 68, her movements were still precise and efficient, a lifetime of service evident in every careful gesture. She'd been with the Callahan family for over 40 years, had practically raised Richard after his mother's early death, and had been his rock through every tragedy, especially the disappearance of little Valerie. The phone rang, breaking the afternoon quiet. Martha answered with her usual measured tone. "Callahan residence." "Martha, it's me." She recognized Richard's voice immediately, but something was different. A tremor, an urgency she hadn't heard in years. "Mr. Richard, is everything all right? I'm bringing someone to the ranch. We'll arrive tomorrow morning." Martha frowned. Richard rarely brought business associates to the ranch. It was his sanctuary, his escape from the corporate world. "Of course. Sir, I'll prepare the guest room." "It's not a business matter, Martha." His voice caught. I think I may have found Valerie." The crystal vase slipped from Martha's fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Water spread across the expensive tiles like a flood threatening to drown her carefully constructed world. That's impossible, Mr. Richard," she managed, her voice suddenly brittle. "It's been 19 years. I know how it sounds. But this young woman, she knows things, Martha. Things only Valerie would know. Martha steadied herself against the table. You've been down this road before, sir. Those private investigators, those false leads, they only brought you more heartache. This is different. She's the right age. She grew up in an orphanage with no memory of her early childhood. And she sings Valerie's song. Martha, the one Catherine wrote for her before she died. Martha's fingers tightened around the phone. What's this young woman's name? Stella. But that's just what the orphanage called her. I'll have everything ready, Martha said, her voice once again the perfect mask of efficiency. Drive safely, Mr. Richard. After hanging up, Martha stood motionless in the foyer, surrounded by broken glass and scattered flowers. For 19 years, she had lived in peace, confident that the little girl would never return. She had been Richard's confidant through his grief, the only maternal figure in his life since his wife's death. And now, this intruder threatened everything. Martha climbed the stairs slowly to the east wing, where a room had remained untouched for 19 years. Valerie's bedroom, preserved exactly as it had been the day she disappeared. Stuffed animals arranged on the bed, stars painted on the ceiling, a music box on the nightstand. With shaking hands, she opened the music box. The same melody that Richard had just described hearing in Madison Square began to play. This can't be happening, she whispered to the empty room. She can't come back. Not now. Not ever. Martha closed the music box with a decisive snap. She would need to handle this situation carefully. Very carefully. In the ranch's office, Martha dialed a number she hadn't called in 19 years. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. I told you never to call this number again. We have a problem, Martha said, her voice cold and determined. The girl has surfaced. Silence stretched across the line before the man spoke again. That's impossible. You paid me to make sure she'd never find her way back. Well, she has. And if Mr. Richard discovers what we did, what do you want me to do about it? The man asked. Nothing yet? Martha's eyes narrowed as she formulated her plan. Just be ready if I call again. As she hung up, Martha Green gazed out the window at the immaculate gardens of Callahan Ranch. For 19 years, she had been the woman of this house, the one Richard depended on, turned to, needed. She'd sacrificed everything to secure her position in his life, and she wasn't about to let some long-lost daughter take it all away. The black Escalade rolled through the wrought iron gates of Callahan Ranch, kicking up dust along the private drive. Stella leaned toward the window, taking in the sprawling Texas estate with wide eyes. Live oaks lined the approach to a stately 2-story ranch house with a wide veranda and stone columns. Behind it, acres of green pasture stretched to the horizon, broken only by white fencing and a distant stable. This is where you live, she asked, clutching her guitar case, the only possession she'd brought from her tiny New York apartment. Richard nodded, studying her face for any sign of recognition. This is home. It's beautiful, she breathed, then added in a quieter voice. It feels familiar somehow, like déjà vu. Richard's throat tightened. He'd spent the 6-hour flight from New York telling Stella about Valerie, showing her photos on his phone, explaining the circumstances of her disappearance. She'd listened with a mix of wonder and apprehension, neither confirming nor denying that she might be his long-lost daughter. I don't want to get your hopes up, she'd said gently, but I can't deny the coincidences. Now, as they approached the house, Richard pointed to a garden visible on the western side of the property. That's where the roses are, the ones you mentioned dreaming about. Stella squinted against the Texas sun. Red roses around a stone fountain. Yes, the word came out strained. The car stopped at the front entrance. Martha Green stood waiting on the porch, ramrod straight in a crisp gray dress, her silver hair pulled back in its usual immaculate bun. As they climbed out, Richard noticed how her eyes fixed on Stella, narrowing slightly before smoothing into a polite smile. Welcome home, Mr. Richard. Martha stepped forward, hands clasped at her waist. And you must be Miss Stella. We've prepared the blue guest room for you. Thank you, Mrs. Green. Richard placed a protective hand on Stella's shoulder. Stella, this is Martha. She's been with our family since before I was born. Stella extended her hand. It's nice to meet you. Martha's handshake was brief and cool. Indeed, you've caused quite a stir, young lady. The subtle emphasis on young lady wasn't lost on Richard. He frowned but said nothing as they entered the house. Stella stopped dead in the foyer, her eyes drawn to a large portrait above the fireplace. A woman with the same brown eyes as hers, holding a toddler on her lap. "That's Catherine," Richard said softly. "My late wife, and Valerie, when she was 2. Your wife, she's not... Catherine died of leukemia when Valerie was 3. Before you..." He caught himself. "Before Valerie disappeared." Martha cleared her throat. "I'm sure our guest is tired after her journey. Perhaps we should let her settle in." "Of course," Richard agreed. "Martha will show you to your room. We can talk more at dinner." As Martha led Stella upstairs, Richard remained in the foyer, watching them go. The older woman walked slightly ahead, her posture stiff, while Stella trailed behind, running her fingers along the mahogany banister with an air of dreamlike fascination. Martha opened the door to the blue guest room, stepping aside to let Stella enter. "Bathroom's through there. Dinner is served at 7 sharp." "Thank you." Stella set her guitar case on the bed. "This is a beautiful home. Mr. Richard has worked very hard for everything he has." Martha's tone was pointed. "He's a good man who's suffered tremendous loss." Stella met the older woman's gaze. "I understand that. I'm not trying to. I don't know what I am to him. I just know there are too many coincidences." "Coincidences," Martha repeated flatly. "Do you know how many young women have claimed to be Valerie Callahan over the years? Gold diggers and con artists? All of them." Stella flinched. "I'm not claiming anything." Richard approached me, not the other way around. "Mr. Richard," Martha corrected. "And he's vulnerable when it comes to his daughter. He sees her everywhere. In everyone." She moved toward the door. "I've watched him get his hopes up and have his heart broken repeatedly. I won't let that happen again." When the door closed behind Martha, Stella sat heavily on the bed. What was she doing here? Had she been crazy to come? She'd had a life in New York, not much of one, scraping by with gigs at coffee shops and subway stations. But it was hers. Now she was in Texas, in a mansion with a millionaire who thought she might be his kidnapped daughter, while his housekeeper clearly wanted her gone. But then there was the pendant, the song, the garden she'd dreamed about that actually existed, the strange feeling of homecoming she couldn't shake. Stella stood and walked to the window. From here, she could see the famous rose garden. Something pulled her toward it like a magnet. In his study, Richard poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and leaned back in his leather chair. He pulled up the contact for Dr. Gabriel Mendoza, his friend from college who now ran a prestigious genetic testing lab in Houston. "Gabe, it's Richard Callahan. I need a favor, and discretion is essential." He briefly explained the situation while omitting certain details. No need to get the press involved, or to let this leak until he was certain. "I can be there tomorrow morning," Gabriel assured him. "A simple cheek swab for both of you, and we'll have preliminary results in 48 hours. "Thank you." Richard ended the call and swiveled his chair to face the window. Through the glass, he spotted a figure moving across the lawn toward the garden. Stella, her dark hair catching the late afternoon light. Something in the way she walked, the slight tilt of her head as she looked up at the sky, was so achingly familiar that tears stung his eyes. His desk phone buzzed. "Sir?" Martha's voice came through the speaker. "I've noticed our guest has gone wandering. Should I retrieve her?" Richard watched as Stella reached the garden gate. "No, Martha, let her explore." Stella pushed open the wrought iron gate and stepped into the rose garden. Red blooms sprawled in every direction, their fragrance heavy in the warm air. At the center stood the fountain from her dreams, a stone basin with a sculpture of a woman pouring water from an urn. She walked toward it, tracing her fingers along the cool stone rim. A flash, a memory or a dream, she couldn't tell. A small hand throwing pennies into the water, a deep voice saying, "Make a wish, my little light." Stella gasped, staggering backward. "Are you all right?" She turned to find Martha standing at the garden entrance, watching her with unreadable eyes. "I've been here before," Stella whispered. "Perhaps you saw pictures online," Martha suggested, her voice tight. "Mr. Richard's company and this estate have been featured in several magazines." "No, it's not that." Stella shook her head. "I know this place, the way the fountain sounds, the specific smell of these roses." She pointed to a stone bench beneath an arbor. "There used to be a swing there, didn't there?" A wooden swing with rope. Martha's face paled slightly. Mr. Richard removed the swing after Valerie disappeared. He found it too painful. Her eyes narrowed. How could you possibly know about that? Before Stella could answer, Martha's phone rang. She answered it, listened briefly, then said, "I'll tell her," hanging up. Martha's expression hardened. That was Mr. Richard. Dinner will be served in 20 minutes, and he's arranged for a doctor to come tomorrow morning for DNA testing. DNA testing, Stella repeated. Yes. Martha's smile was cold. Isn't that what you wanted, proof? As the older woman turned to leave, Stella called after her. Mrs. Green, what was she like, Valerie? Martha paused but didn't turn around. She was the center of his world, even more than her mother was. Then she walked away, her back rigid, leaving Stella alone with the fountain's whispers and the ghosts of memories she couldn't quite grasp. The morning sun painted golden rectangles across the guest room floor, as Stella woke to the unfamiliar softness of Egyptian cotton sheets. For a moment, panic gripped her. Where was she? Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. The mansion. Richard Callahan. The possibility that she might be his long-lost daughter. She showered quickly and dressed in one of the few outfits she'd brought, jeans and a simple blue blouse. As she brushed her hair, she studied her reflection, searching for resemblances to the photos Richard had shown her. The same eyes, perhaps, the curve of her jaw, or was she just seeing what she wanted to see? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Stella. Martha's voice came through the door. Breakfast is ready, and Dr. Mendoza will be arriving in an hour. Stella's stomach churned at the thought of the DNA test. Part of her was desperate to know the truth, while another part feared it. If she wasn't Valerie, she'd have built up Richard's hopes for nothing. And if she was, what then? Could she really step into the life of a long-lost heiress after years of struggling on her own? Downstairs, Richard sat at the head of a massive oak dining table, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered, his face lighting with that mixture of hope and caution she was beginning to recognize. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Yes. Thank you. She slid into the chair he indicated. Though I had strange dreams. Richard set his tablet aside, giving her his full attention. What kind of dreams? I was running through the rose garden, but I was small. A child. Someone was calling my name. But it wasn't Stella. She frowned. I couldn't quite make it out. Martha appeared with a tray of fresh fruit, toast, and coffee. Her movements were efficient, but her eyes never left Stella as she served breakfast. Martha, Richard said. After Dr. Mendoza leaves, I'd like you to show Stella around the property, particularly the East Wing. The silver serving spoon in Martha's hand trembled slightly. The East Wing has been closed for years, sir. I think it's time we opened it. Richard's tone was gentle but firm. Martha's lips pressed into a thin line. As you wish, sir. After breakfast, Dr. Gabriel Mendoza arrived. A distinguished man in his late 40s with kind eyes and a reassuring manner. He explained the DNA testing procedure to Stella in simple terms, collected cheek swabs from both her and Richard, and promised results within 48 hours. I've marked this as urgent, he told Richard as he packed up his kit, and I'll handle it personally. Once the doctor left, Martha approached Stella with a set of keys jangling from her finger. Mr. Richard has asked me to show you the East Wing, she said, her tone making it clear what she thought of the idea. I suppose we should get it over with. The East Wing of the mansion had a different feel from the rest. Quieter, preserved in amber. Dust sheets covered furniture, and the air held a stillness that spoke of long abandonment. This was Mrs. Callahan's studio, Martha said, unlocking the first door. She was a musician, a concert pianist. Inside, a grand piano dominated the room, its surface dusty but gleaming beneath. Sheet music still sat on the stand, as if waiting for its owner to return. Catherine died when Valerie was 3, Martha explained, her voice softer now. Leukemia. It was very sudden. Stella ran her fingers over the piano keys, producing a discordant sound. Did she compose the song, the one I sing? Martha nodded stiffly. She wrote it for Valerie when she was born, called it Little Light on Silver Streams. She turned away abruptly. Next room. They moved down the hallway, Martha unlocking each door in turn. a library with children's books still stacked on a small table, a sunroom with faded cushions, and finally, at the end of the hall, a door painted pale lavender. Martha hesitated, key in hand. This was Valerie's room. Mr. Richard has kept it exactly as it was the day she disappeared. She unlocked the door but didn't open it. I'll leave you to explore on your own. I have duties to attend to. As Martha walked away, Stella noticed how the older woman's shoulders had tensed. Her hands balled into fists at her sides. There was something about Martha's reaction that seemed strange, more than just the discomfort of a loyal employee worried about her boss's feelings. Stella pushed the thought aside and turned the doorknob. The bedroom was frozen in time, a little girl's sanctuary with pale purple walls and white furniture. Stuffed animals lined a twin bed with a frilly canopy. A dollhouse sat in one corner, a child-sized table and chairs in another. But what caught Stella's eye immediately was the ceiling, painted midnight blue with glow-in-the-dark stars arranged in constellations. "The stars," she whispered, a wave of dizziness washing over her. "I remember the stars." She moved to the center of the room, turning slowly. Every detail seemed to trigger something in her mind. Faint echoes, shadows of memories, the rocking horse by the window, the bookshelf filled with picture books. On the nightstand sat a silver music box with trembling fingers. Stella lifted the lid, the melody that emerged, the same song she'd been singing for as long as she could remember, hit her like a physical force. She sank to her knees beside the bed, overwhelmed. Images flashed through her mind. A woman with kind eyes playing piano, a man's strong hands lifting her toward those glowing stars, the feel of this carpet beneath her small feet as she danced. Valerie, the name fell from her lips. Not a question, but a statement. And with it came a torrent of tears she couldn't explain or control. She didn't know how long she sat there, but eventually she became aware of someone watching. Richard stood in the doorway, his face a mask of emotion. "You opened the music box," he said hoarsely. Stella nodded, wiping her tears. "I knew it would be there. I knew what song it would play." She looked up at him, her voice breaking. "That's not possible unless you're Valerie." He crossed the room and knelt beside her, his eyes searching hers. "I think I am," she whispered. "I think I'm your daughter." From the shadows of the hallway, Martha watched the scene unfold with cold dread. Things were moving too quickly. The girl remembered too much. The DNA results would only confirm what was becoming increasingly obvious. She slipped away unnoticed, her mind racing. In the privacy of her quarters, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "It's me," she said. When the gruff voice answered, "I told you not to call this number again," the man growled. "The situation has escalated." She remembers things only Valerie would know. "The test results will be back in 2 days. And what do you expect me to do about it?" Martha closed her eyes. "I need to know exactly what happened that day. Where you took her, what orphanage, everything. Why, so you can create a better story when they come for you." He laughed harshly. "You paid me to make a 6-year-old girl disappear. Do you really think you're walking away from this? Just tell me what I need to know," Martha hissed, "or I'll make sure you go down with me." After a long pause, he relented. "Fine. Meet me tomorrow night. Same place as before." Martha hung up and stared at her reflection in the mirror. 19 years ago, she'd made a desperate choice to eliminate what she saw as a threat to her position in Richard's life. Now that choice had returned to haunt her, and she needed to decide how far she was willing to go to protect the life she'd built. Because one thing was becoming crystal clear. If Stella was indeed Valerie Callahan, then Martha Green was about to lose everything. Richard paced his study, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand raking through his silver-streaked hair. The private investigator he'd hired 19 years ago, and kept on retainer ever since, was giving him an update on the orphanage where Stella had been raised. "Something doesn't add up, Mr. Callahan," Detective Miller said, his gravelly voice serious. "Sunshine Children's Home in Pennsylvania has records of a girl matching Stella's description arriving in 2006, right around when Valerie disappeared. But the paperwork is irregular." "What do you mean by irregular?" Richard stopped pacing. "Intake forms with missing signatures, no record of who brought her in, vague details about where she was found. And get this, there was a fire at the orphanage 7 years ago that destroyed many of their older paper records." Convenient, right? Richard frowned. Are you suggesting someone deliberately covered their tracks? I'm saying it's worth digging deeper. I'll keep looking, but I wanted you to know my initial findings. After hanging up, Richard stared out the window at the Texas landscape stretching to the horizon. Beyond the rose garden, he could see Stella sitting by the stables, petting one of the horses, exactly where Valerie had loved to spend her afternoons. Every hour that passed, Stella did or said something that convinced him more deeply that she was his daughter. The way she unconsciously hummed Catherine's song while thinking. The way she took her coffee with 2 sugars and cinnamon, just as Valerie had liked her hot chocolate. Small, impossible things she couldn't have researched. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in. Martha entered with a silver tray bearing a crystal decanter of scotch and a single glass. You missed lunch, sir. I thought you might want something. Thank you, Martha. He accepted the glass she poured him. Any news from Dr. Mendoza? Martha's lips tightened. Not yet, sir, but I wanted to discuss something with you. About Miss Stella. Richard raised an eyebrow. Go on. I've been doing some research. Martha's voice was carefully neutral. There have been several cases of young women with amnesia who developed false memories based on stories they were told. It's called confabulation. Their minds fill in blanks with details they've heard, making them believe they actually remember events. What are you suggesting, Martha? Only that you should be cautious. This young woman may genuinely believe she's Valerie because she wants to be, especially after hearing your stories and seeing this house. Richard swirled the amber liquid in his glass. I understand your concern, but this feels different. She knew about the swing in the garden before I mentioned it. She recognized Catherine's song. Those aren't things she could have researched. Martha clasped her hands tightly. I just don't want to see you hurt again, sir. Remember that woman from Austin 3 years ago? Richard winced at the memory of another false lead, another crushed hope. This is different. I hope you're right. Martha moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Elena Fuentes called. She heard you were back in Texas and wants to visit. Richard looked up, surprised. Elena, I haven't spoken to her in years. She was very persistent. Martha's tone had cooled. I told her you were occupied with business, but she insisted. She was Valerie's nanny, after all. Yes, of course she can visit. Tell her to come tomorrow. Martha nodded stiffly. As you wish, sir. After she left, Richard finished his scotch in one burning swallow. Elena Fuentes had been Valerie's nanny from birth until a few months before the disappearance. When Martha had convinced him the child was too old for a nanny, Elena had loved Valerie fiercely and had been devastated by her disappearance. If anyone could help confirm whether Stella was truly Valerie, it would be Elena. That night, Stella couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, fragmentary images flashed through her mind. Running through the rose garden, a woman's gentle hands braiding her hair, the warm security of being tucked into bed beneath those glowing stars. Were they real memories, or just her mind playing tricks? Filling in gaps with what she'd seen and heard since arriving? She couldn't be sure. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and decided to get some water. The mansion was eerily quiet as she padded barefoot down the grand staircase. Moonlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor as she approached the kitchen. Voices drifted from Martha's quarters adjacent to it, one of them Martha's, the other unfamiliar and male. I can't meet you tomorrow, Martha was saying, her voice tense. Someone from Valerie's past is visiting, her former nanny. That complicates things, the male voice replied. What does she know? Nothing concrete, but she always had suspicions. She never liked me. Stella froze, her heart racing. Were they talking about her? About Valerie? You need to get that DNA sample, the man continued. If the tests come back positive, I know what's at stake, Martha snapped. I've protected my position in this household for 40 years. I won't let some girl destroy everything. Stella backed away silently, her mind reeling. What had she just heard? Was Martha trying to sabotage the DNA test? Why would she do that unless... A floorboard creaked beneath Stella's foot. The voices inside instantly went silent. Stella turned and fled back upstairs, not stopping until she was safely in her room with the door locked. She sat on the bed, trembling, trying to process what she'd overheard. If Martha was plotting against her, whom could she trust? Richard. She barely knew him, And if she told him her suspicions about his beloved housekeeper, would he even believe her? Sleep eluded her for the rest of the night. Morning brought a flurry of activity to the ranch. Richard was out early, meeting with his ranch manager about property matters. Stella avoided Martha, claiming a headache and staying in her room until the housekeeper left to run errands in town. Around noon, a small red car pulled up the drive. From her window, Stella watched a woman in her early 60s emerge. She had warm brown skin, silver-streaked black hair pulled into a practical ponytail, and moved with the energy of someone much younger. Richard appeared from the stables, greeting the woman with a hug. Even from a distance, Stella could see the emotion in their reunion. A knock came at her bedroom door minutes later. "Stella," Richard called. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." Downstairs, the woman, Elena Fuentes, stood in the foyer, her dark eyes widening as Stella descended the stairs. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears instantly welling up. "Dios mío," she whispered. "It's like seeing a ghost. Elena was Valerie's nanny from the time she was born," Richard explained. "She left a few months before I was replaced by Martha," Elena said, a hint of old bitterness in her voice. "May I?" She approached Stella, hands outstretched. Stella nodded, allowing the older woman to take her face between gentle hands, studying her features intently. The eyes, they're Catherine's, and that little mark. Elena touched a small, crescent-shaped birthmark behind Stella's ear that Stella herself had forgotten about. Valerie had this exact mark. I used to tell her it was where an angel kissed her. Something about the woman's touch. Her scent, a subtle mix of cinnamon and floral soap, triggered another flash in Stella's mind. Sitting on a kitchen counter while gentle hands braided her hair, the same scent enveloping her, feeling safe and loved. "You used to braid my hair," Stella whispered. "And let me help make cinnamon cookies," Elena gasped, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "No one could know that. No one." She turned to Richard. "It's her. It's our Valerie." From the doorway, Martha watched the reunion, her face a mask of controlled fury. The past she had buried 19 years ago was clawing its way to the surface, and she was rapidly running out of options to keep it contained. When Elena's eyes met hers across the room, Martha saw the suspicion there, the same suspicion that had gotten Elena dismissed from her position all those years ago. When she'd started asking too many questions about Martha's unusual interest in controlling Richard's household and his daughter's activities, Martha forced a tight smile and retreated to the kitchen. She had preparations to make, and not much time left. The DNA results would arrive tomorrow, and Elena's presence complicated matters considerably. One way or another, she would have to act tonight. The lab results arrived early the next morning, a plain manila envelope handed to Richard personally by Dr. Mendoza, who had driven from Houston at dawn. The two men retreated to Richard's study, closing the door behind them. Stella waited in the sunroom, attempting to read but unable to focus on the words. Elena sat with her, providing silent support. The former nanny had stayed overnight, claiming the guest cottage at Richard's insistence, unwilling to leave once she'd found the girl she'd helped raise. "Try not to worry," Elena said, patting Stella's trembling hands. "Whatever those results say, you are who you are. But what if I'm not her? What if this has all been some crazy coincidence?" Stella set her book aside. "Richard will be devastated. And if you are?" Elena asked gently. Stella took a shaky breath. "Then someone took me from my home. Someone stole 19 years that should have been mine." Her voice hardened. "And I want to know who." The study door opened. Richard emerged, his face unreadable as he walked toward them, the envelope clutched in his hand. Stella stood, her heart hammering against her ribs. "The results," Richard said, his voice husky with emotion, "show a 99.9% probability of paternity." He looked directly at Stella, tears welling in his eyes. "You are my daughter. You are Valerie Callahan." The world seemed to tilt beneath Stella's feet, even though she'd begun to believe it. Hearing scientific confirmation was overwhelming. Elena let out a choked sob and immediately embraced her. "I knew it," the older woman whispered. "I knew it was you, mi niña." Richard joined the embrace, and for a moment, they stood together, a fractured family beginning to heal. Then Stella gently extracted herself. "I need to understand what happened," she said, wiping tears from her cheeks. "How did I end up at that orphanage? Who took me from here?" Richard nodded grimly. "Detective Miller is already investigating. The DNA confirmation gives us grounds to officially reopen the kidnapping case." He hesitated. "But there's something else we need to discuss. Your name, your legal identity." "I've been Stella for as long as I can remember," she said slowly. "But that's not who I really am, is it?" "Your legal name is Valerie Catherine Callahan," Richard said. "But what you call yourself now, that's your choice." She considered this, feeling the weight of dual identities. "I think I need to embrace who I really am. I want to be Valerie again." A small smile lifted the corner of her mouth. "Though maybe my friends can still call me Stella." "Valerie," Richard repeated, as if testing the name on his tongue after so many years. "My little light." From the doorway came the sound of a throat clearing. Martha stood there, a silver tray in her hands, her face composed into a careful mask. "Lunch is served," she announced, her gaze flicking briefly to the envelope in Richard's hand. "Shall I set a place for Dr. Mendoza as well?" "Thank you, Martha," Richard replied, suddenly formal. "Dr. Mendoza will be joining us, and Martha," he held up the envelope. "The test confirms it. Stella is Valerie. My daughter has come home." Martha's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the tray. "How wonderful, sir. A true miracle after all these years." Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she turned to Valerie. "Miss Valerie, then. Welcome home." The way Martha said her name sent an inexplicable chill down Valerie's spine. The celebration lunch was a strange affair. Richard and Elena reminisced about Valerie's childhood, filling in gaps in her memory with stories and anecdotes. Dr. Mendoza explained the science behind the DNA test, assuring them there was no mistake. Martha served each course with mechanical efficiency, her expression blank, speaking only when spoken to during dessert, a perfect creme brulee that Martha had prepared despite the short notice. Richard raised his glass. "To miracles," he said simply, "and to having my daughter back where she belongs." Everyone clinked glasses. Valerie noticed that Martha barely sipped her champagne. After lunch, Dr. Mendoza departed with promises to provide formal documentation for the legal process of restoring Valerie's identity. Richard excused himself to call his attorneys. Elena offered to show Valerie photo albums that had been stored away years ago, and they retreated to the library. Martha began clearing the lunch dishes, her movements precise yet somehow brittle, like a porcelain figurine about to crack. When she thought no one was watching, her mask slipped, revealing such raw hatred that a passing housemaid quickened her steps to escape the kitchen. "These were taken on your 4th birthday," Elena said, pointing to photographs of a little girl in a pink dress, blowing out candles on a cake shaped like a carousel. "You insisted on a horse theme because you just started riding lessons." Valerie studied the child version of herself, searching for connections to her current face. "I remember the pony," she said suddenly. "A small white one named Sugar." Elena beamed. "Yes, Richard bought her for your birthday. You rode her every day." They continued through the albums, each photo potentially triggering fragments of memory. Some brought nothing, others unleashed vivid flashes. The feel of the saddle beneath her, the sound of her father's laughter, the smell of her mother's perfume from the clothes still kept in Catherine's closet. "What happened the day I disappeared?" Valerie asked eventually. It was the question that had been haunting her since the DNA results arrived. "No one's really told me the details." Elena's expression darkened. "It was a beautiful spring day. You went out to play in the rose garden after lunch. You always played there. Martha was supposedly watching you while I was in town buying groceries." Bitterness crept into her voice. "When I returned, the entire ranch was in chaos. You had vanished. No ransom note, no evidence of a break-in. Just gone. And no one saw anything." Elena shook her head. "Martha claimed she'd only stepped away for 5 minutes to answer a phone call. By the time she returned to check on you, you had disappeared." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I always thought it was strange that there were no footprints, no broken gate locks, nothing to indicate how someone could have taken you without being seen." "You suspected something." "I had concerns about Martha." Elena lowered her voice, glancing toward the door. "She was always possessive of your father. She'd been with the family since Richard was a boy, practically raised him after his mother died when your mother was alive. There was tension. After Catherine passed, Martha essentially took over the household. When you disappeared, she became indispensable to Richard in his grief. Valerie processed this, connecting it with the conversation she'd overheard between Martha and the unknown man. Did you ever share these concerns? I tried. A month before you disappeared, I told Richard I thought Martha's attachment to him was unhealthy. How she'd find reasons to dismiss the staff he'd grown close to. How she'd undermine my authority with you. How she'd insert herself into family moments. Elena sighed. He didn't want to believe it. Martha had been his surrogate mother for so long, and after you disappeared, he needed her more than ever. I was let go shortly after. Martha convinced him I was too emotional, that my presence reminded him too much of his loss. A cold realization was forming in Valerie's mind. Elena, do you think... She stopped as the library door swung open. Martha stood in the doorway, her tall figure silhouetted against the hallway light. Mr. Richard is asking for you both in his study, she announced. He's on the phone with the FBI about reopening the investigation. As they followed Martha down the hallway, Valerie caught Elena's eye. The older woman gave an almost imperceptible nod, confirming the unspoken suspicion between them. That night, alone in her room, her childhood room, which Richard had insisted she reclaim, Valerie lay awake beneath the glow-in-the-dark stars. Now that she knew who she was, one question burned brighter than all others. Who had stolen her childhood? And as Martha's strange behavior and Elena's suspicions collided with her own overheard conversation, a terrible possibility was taking shape in her mind. But she needed proof, and to get it, she would have to confront the darkest mystery of her forgotten past. Valerie woke with a start, heart racing, sweat beading on her forehead. In her dream, a shadowy figure had leaned over her bed, whispering, "You need to leave. He's mine. Only mine." The face had been blurred, but the voice, it had been hauntingly familiar. The digital clock on her nightstand read 3:17 a.m. Knowing sleep wouldn't return easily, she slipped out of bed and pulled on a robe. Perhaps some warm milk would help, an old remedy from her orphanage days. The mansion was silent as she made her way downstairs. Guided by the soft security lights that lined the hallways, as she approached the kitchen, she heard it, a hushed voice coming from Martha's quarters. The housekeeper was awake too, and on the phone at this hour. "I don't care what it costs," Martha was saying, her voice tight with tension. "The situation has become critical. The DNA test confirmed it. She's Valerie." Valerie froze, pressing herself against the wall beside the partially open door. "No, you listen to me," Martha continued. "I paid you an enormous sum to make sure she disappeared permanently. You assured me she would never find her way back here. Now I need options." Valerie's blood turned to ice. The confirmation of her worst suspicion left her momentarily paralyzed. "Don't threaten me," Martha hissed into the phone. "If I go down for this, you go down with me. Remember who has the offshore account details?" A pause. "Fine. Tomorrow night, the usual place." There was a click as Martha ended the call, followed by the sound of a drawer opening and closing. Valerie backed away silently, then turned and hurried upstairs, her mind racing. Martha, the woman who had been like a mother to her father, who had run this household for decades, had arranged her kidnapping, paid someone to take her away, to rob her of her family and her true identity. But why? Once safely back in her room, Valerie paced the floor, piecing together fragments of information. Elena's suspicions about Martha's possessive attachment to Richard, the way Martha had ingratiated herself after Valerie's disappearance, becoming Richard's emotional crutch, the cold hostility barely concealed beneath her proper exterior. Whenever she looked at Valerie now, the truth dawned with sickening clarity. Martha had wanted Richard to herself. Valerie had been in the way. She needed to tell her father. But would he believe such a monstrous accusation against a woman he'd trusted his entire life? She needed proof, something more substantial than an overheard phone call. Tomorrow night, Martha was meeting someone, presumably the person she'd paid to kidnap Valerie. If she could somehow follow Martha, record the meeting. Valerie's planning was interrupted by a soft knock at her door. Her heart leapt to her throat. "Who is it?" she called softly. "It's Elena. I saw your light on. May I come in?" Valerie exhaled with relief and opened the door. The former nanny stood in the hallway in a floral robe, concern etched on her face. "I couldn't sleep," Elena explained. "Something about being back in this house after so many years. Then I noticed your light." She studied Valerie's face. "What's wrong?" "Mija, you look like you've seen a ghost." Valerie pulled Elena into the room and closed the door. "It was Martha," she whispered. "I just heard her on the phone. She paid someone to kidnap me 19 years ago." Elena's eyes widened, but Valerie noticed she didn't look entirely surprised. "You suspected this," Valerie said, realization dawning. "All those years ago?" Elena nodded grimly. "I had no proof, just observations, concerns. Martha was obsessed with your father after your mother died. It got worse. She would insert herself into every aspect of his life, create reasons why he needed her. When I tried to warn Richard, she made sure I was dismissed. She's meeting someone tomorrow night, the person who took me." Elena grasped Valerie's hands. "You need to tell your father immediately." "With what evidence?" "An overheard phone call. He's trusted Martha his entire life. She practically raised him after his grandmother died." Valerie shook her head. "I need irrefutable proof." "What are you thinking?" "I'm going to follow her tomorrow night. Record the meeting somehow." "That's too dangerous," Elena protested. "This woman arranged a kidnapping. What else might she be capable of?" "I can't let her get away with this," Valerie insisted. "She stole my childhood, my identity. She destroyed my relationship with my father." Elena was quiet for a moment. "You won't go alone," she finally said. "I'm coming with you." The next morning, Richard announced that FBI agents would arrive later that day to formally reopen the kidnapping investigation. With the DNA confirmation, they're treating this as a priority, he explained over breakfast. "They'll want to interview all of us, especially you, Valerie, to understand what you remember from before the orphanage." Martha, serving coffee with her usual efficiency, betrayed only the slightest tightening around her eyes at this news. "How wonderful that the authorities are taking this seriously," she said smoothly. "After all this time, justice might finally be served." Valerie watched Martha's performance with newfound clarity. The perfect housekeeper, the devoted family servant, the surrogate mother, all masks covering a possessive, calculating woman who had committed an unthinkable crime. "Martha," Richard said, "the agents will particularly want to speak with you, since you were the last person to see Valerie before she vanished." "Of course, sir. I've always wished I could have been more helpful." Martha's gaze slid to Valerie. "It broke my heart to see you suffering all those years." The sheer audacity of the lie made Valerie's stomach churn. After breakfast, Detective Miller arrived ahead of the FBI team. Richard invited him into the study for a private consultation. The moment they were gone, Martha approached Valerie, lowering her voice. "Miss Valerie, a word." Valerie steeled herself. Following Martha into the conservatory, where tropical plants created a jungle-like atmosphere, it was empty except for the two of them. "I wanted to apologize," Martha said, her voice gentle and maternal. "I know I've seemed unwelcoming since your arrival." Valerie kept her expression neutral. "Have you? It's just that I've seen Mr. Richard get his hopes up before, only to be crushed when previous leads proved false. I was protecting him." Martha's eyes glistened with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "But now that we know you're truly Valerie, I want you to know how happy I am, for both of you. The performance was masterful. If Valerie hadn't overheard the phone call, she might have been swayed by the seemingly heartfelt words. Thank you, Martha. That means a lot." Martha reached out, taking Valerie's hand between both of hers. "This house hasn't been the same without you. Perhaps now Mr. Richard can finally heal." As Martha's cool fingers wrapped around her hand, Valerie had a sudden, vivid flash of memory. Those same hands untying her shoelaces in the rose garden. A gentle voice saying, "Your shoes are untied. Let me help you." Then a sweet-smelling cloth covering her face. Darkness descending, Valerie jerked her hand away, unable to hide her reaction. "Is something wrong, dear?" Martha asked, her eyes sharp despite her solicitous tone. "No," Valerie managed. "Just a headache coming on, if you'll excuse me." She fled the conservatory, her heart racing. The memory had been so clear, so specific. It wasn't just that Martha had arranged the kidnapping. She had physically abducted Valerie herself, before handing her off to whoever had taken her to the orphanage. In the hallway, she nearly collided with Elena, who took one look at her ashen face and pulled her into an empty sitting room. "What happened?" "I remembered," Valerie whispered. "Martha drugged me in the garden. She didn't just arrange it. She did it herself." Elena's expression hardened. "We need to tell your father now." "Tell me what?" They turned to find Richard standing in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Valerie took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than expected. "Dad," she said, the word still new on her tongue. "There's something you need to know about Martha." Richard's face hardened as Valerie recounted what she'd overheard and remembered. Martha's late-night phone call, the flash of memory in the conservatory, the pieces falling into place with Elena's long-held suspicions. Throughout her account, he remained eerily still, his hands gripping the arms of his chair, until his knuckles turned white. "I know it sounds incredible," Valerie finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's been your rock for decades, but I believe you." Richard's voice was flat, controlled in a way that suggested emotion too powerful to release. Elena and Valerie exchanged surprised glances. "You do?" Valerie asked. Richard stood and moved to the window, staring out at the garden where his daughter had vanished 19 years ago. "Detective Miller arrived early because he found something. The man who delivered you to the orphanage. They identified him through old security footage recently digitized by the facility. James Kruger, a former ranch hand who worked here briefly before you disappeared." He turned back to face them, his eyes haunted. "He was hired by Martha. Her signature is on his employment paperwork. He left the ranch the same day you vanished, and deposited $20,000 in cash the following week." Valerie felt her legs go weak. She sank onto the edge of a chair. "So you already knew?" "I suspected. Miller showed me the evidence an hour ago." Richard's composure cracked slightly. "I've been sitting in my study trying to process the betrayal. Martha is practically my mother. The thought that she could do this." He stopped, voice breaking. Elena moved to Richard's side, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "What now?" "The FBI team will be here within the hour. I've asked Miller to keep this information confidential until they arrive. If Martha realizes we suspect her, she already has plans to flee." Valerie interjected. "I heard her arranging to meet someone tonight. Her accomplice." Richard's jaw tightened. "Then we need to act now. Miller is parked down the road. If we can get concrete evidence of her involvement before the FBI arrives. A confession. Perhaps." "How?" Elena asked. "She'll never admit it to you." Richard was quiet for a moment, his expression darkening. "She might to Valerie, alone." "No," Elena protested immediately. "Too dangerous." "I'll do it," Valerie said, surprising herself with her resolve. "I need answers, not just for the legal case, but for myself. I need to know why she did this to me." Richard shook his head. "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering." Valerie stood, suddenly feeling stronger. "If I confront her in the garden, the scene of the crime, while wearing a recording device, we might get what we need." "Miller has surveillance equipment in his car," Richard said slowly. "But I don't like putting you at risk. I've spent 19 years in the dark about who I really am," Valerie replied. "I need to look her in the eye and hear the truth from her own lips." 30 minutes later, Valerie wore a small recording device concealed beneath her blouse. Detective Miller, a weathered man with watchful eyes, had briefed her carefully. "Ask open-ended questions. Let her talk. Don't accuse directly at first. Work up to it. The FBI team is 20 minutes out. We'll be monitoring from the security room, ready to intervene." Richard embraced his daughter tightly. "Be careful. If anything feels wrong, just walk away." Valerie nodded, drawing a deep breath as she headed toward the garden where Martha was pruning roses. Just as she did every afternoon at this time, the familiar ritual had continued uninterrupted, despite the upheaval of the past few days. A testament to Martha's dedication to maintaining appearances. The sun was warm on Valerie's face as she stepped through the garden gate. Martha looked up from her work, secateurs in her gloved hands, a wide-brimmed hat shading her face. "Miss Valerie," she acknowledged with a nod, "enjoying the afternoon sunshine." "It's beautiful here," Valerie said, approaching slowly. "I've been having more memories of this place, especially the garden." Something flickered in Martha's eyes. Wariness, perhaps. "Oh, how nice for you. I remembered something specific today." Valerie moved closer to the fountain, the heart of the garden, where it had all happened. "About the day I disappeared." Martha's hands stilled on the rose she was pruning. "What did you remember?" "Someone untying my shoelaces. A sweet smell. Then darkness." Valerie watched Martha's face carefully. "Does that mean anything to you?" The secateurs snipped shut with unnecessary force, severing the rose completely. Martha placed it carefully in her basket before answering. "Children's memories are so unreliable," she said lightly, "especially after trauma. This didn't feel unreliable. It felt real." Valerie sat on the edge of the fountain, trailing her fingers through the cool water. "I've been thinking about why someone would take me. It wasn't for ransom. No demand was ever made. It wasn't some stranger passing by. The ranch is too isolated." Martha pulled off her gardening gloves, her movements deliberate. "The investigation concluded it was likely an opportunistic crime. Perhaps someone who saw you playing alone and made a split-second decision." "But I wasn't alone," Valerie said, watching Martha intently. "You were supposed to be watching me. That's what the reports say." A tense silence stretched between them. Martha's face remained impassive, but her eyes had grown cold. "I stepped away briefly to answer a phone call," she said, the familiar explanation practiced and smooth. "My deepest regret." "Was there really a phone call, Martha?" The older woman stiffened. "What exactly are you implying?" Valerie's heart pounded, but she pressed on. "I think you know what happened to me that day. I think you were more than just negligent." Martha's laugh was brittle. "This is absurd. I've devoted my life to this family, to your father. That's just it, isn't it?" Valerie stood, moving closer. "Your devotion to my father, it wasn't healthy. Was it? Elena saw it. Maybe others did too. You wanted him all to yourself. You don't know what you're talking about," Martha snapped, abandoning her calm facade. "I raised that man. I was there when his mother abandoned him, when his wife died. I've been the only constant in his life. Until me," Valerie said softly. "His daughter, the center of his world." Martha's lips pressed into a thin line. "You were a spoiled child who monopolized his attention. After Catherine died, you were all he cared about. As if I hadn't spent decades caring for him, sacrificing for him. So you got rid of me." Valerie felt a chill despite the warm sun. "You drugged me right here, by this fountain. And then what? Handed me off to James Kruger. Paid him to take me far away." Martha went very still. "James Kruger," she repeated, her voice dangerously soft. "Where did you hear that name? Does it matter?" Valerie held Martha's gaze. "The FBI is on their way. They've identified him from footage at the orphanage. The money trail leads back to you." Something changed in Martha's expression. Calculation replacing caution. Desperation overriding discipline. She glanced toward the house, then back at Valerie. "You have no idea what you're meddling with," she said, her voice low and threatening. 19 years of careful planning, of protecting your father from the pain of losing you. I gave you a chance at a new life. I could have chosen a far worse fate for you. You expect me to be grateful?" Valerie's anger flared. "You stole my childhood, my identity, my father. He was never your father," Martha hissed, advancing toward her. "He was mine long before you existed. I raised him from a boy. I nursed him through his grief when his fickle mother ran off with her lover, when his fragile wife succumbed to illness. I was the only one who truly loved him, who understood him. So you took his daughter away," Valerie said, backing toward the fountain. "Because you couldn't stand sharing him. That's not love, Martha. That's obsession." Martha's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. "You know nothing about love. I did what was necessary. Richard was drowning in grief after Catherine died, focusing all his attention on you instead of moving forward. You were a constant reminder of her. With you gone, he could finally heal, with me by his side, as it should have been all along." In the sunlight, Martha's face was transformed by the ugliness of her confession. Decades of jealousy, possessiveness, and warped devotion laid bare, and in that moment, Valerie knew she had what they needed. Beyond the garden wall, sirens wailed in the distance. Growing closer, Martha's eyes darted toward the sound of approaching sirens, then back to Valerie. In that split second, calculation replaced rage on her face. "You're recording this," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. Valerie didn't deny it. "It's over, Martha." The older woman's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Is it? Your father has heard worse accusations against me over the years, all easily dismissed. Do you really think he'll choose you? A stranger who wandered into his life days ago, over the woman who's been his rock for 5 decades. He already knows." Valerie stepped back as Martha's expression darkened. "Detective Miller found Kruger. The money trail leads directly to you." Martha went still, processing this information. When she spoke again, her voice had turned calculating. "There are aspects of this situation you don't understand. Arrangements that were made. Insurance policies, you might say." "What are you talking about?" "I've protected your father from many things over the years, not just the pain of losing you." Martha straightened her spine, regaining her composure despite the approaching sirens. "I know things about the Callahan family that would destroy Richard's reputation if they became public." The garden gate burst open. Richard strode through with Detective Miller and 2 uniformed officers close behind. "That's enough, Martha." Richard's voice was ice cold, controlled fury radiating from every syllable. "You've said more than enough." Martha turned to face him, her expression softening instantly. "Richard, this girl has been manipulating you from the moment she arrived. These wild accusations." "Stop." Richard held up a hand. "I heard everything. The security room has audio feed from the wire Valerie is wearing." His voice broke slightly. "How could you? I trusted you my entire life. Everything I did was for you." Martha took a step toward him, but froze when the officers moved forward. "Don't you see? After Catherine died, you were drowning in grief, focused only on Valerie. You couldn't move forward. So you took my daughter from me." Richard's control slipped, raw pain flooding his features. "You condemned me to 19 years of agony, wondering if she was alive or dead, imagining the worst possibilities. I gave you a chance to rebuild." Martha's voice took on a pleading quality. "And I was right there, helping you through it all. We became closer than ever, because you eliminated what you saw as competition." Richard's disgust was palpable. "My own child. I protected you." Martha's facade crumbled, desperation breaking through. "I've always protected you. From your mother's abandonment, from Catherine's family after she died, from business rivals, from everyone who would hurt you." Detective Miller stepped forward. "Martha Green, you're under arrest for the kidnapping of Valerie Callahan." He nodded to the officers who moved to flank Martha. "Richard, please." Martha ignored the officers, her eyes fixed on the man she'd devoted her life to. "Think about what you're doing. After all these years together, all I've sacrificed for you. Save it for your statement." Miller interrupted, nodding to the officers who began reciting Miranda rights as they handcuffed the elderly woman. Martha's pleading expression vanished, replaced by cold fury as she was restrained. "This isn't over," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I still have the documents, Richard. One call from me, and everything comes out." Richard paled slightly, but stood his ground. "Do what you have to do. Nothing matters more than justice for my daughter." As the officers led Martha away, she looked back once at Valerie, her gaze filled with such venomous hatred that Valerie instinctively stepped closer to her father. "I should have handled you myself 19 years ago," Martha hissed. "Trusting Kruger was my mistake, one I won't make again." The threat hung in the air. Even after Martha was escorted from the garden, the FBI team arrived minutes later. A flurry of badges, equipment, and purposeful activity that transformed the peaceful ranch into a crime scene. Richard, Valerie, and Elena were separated for individual questioning, each giving their statement multiple times as agents built their case against Martha Green. Hours later, they reconvened in Richard's study. Outside, the sun was setting, bathing the room in amber light. Valerie slumped in an armchair, emotionally and physically exhausted. "Agent Torres says they have enough to hold her," Richard said, loosening his tie. He looked decades older than he had that morning. "Your recorded confession, combined with the evidence they already had on Kruger, makes a solid case." "What did she mean about documents?" Elena asked. "That sounded like blackmail." Richard poured himself a scotch with a slightly trembling hand. Martha has been with this family through some difficult times. She knows things, family secrets, business decisions that existed in gray areas legally. Nothing criminal, but potentially embarrassing if made public. Will she use them? Valerie asked quietly. Probably. Richard took a long swallow of his drink. But it doesn't matter. Let her do her worst. I lost 19 years with my daughter because of that woman's obsession. Nothing she can reveal would compare to that crime. A knock at the study door interrupted them. Agent Torres, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, entered with a tablet in hand. "We've got Kruger," she announced without preamble. State police picked him up at a motel outside Austin, apparently. He was preparing to flee the country, had a ticket to Brazil for tomorrow morning. "Will he talk?" Richard asked. "Already has. Trying to cut a deal." Torres swiped through documents on her tablet. He claims Martha approached him a month before the kidnapping, offering $10,000 upfront and another $20,000 after delivery. His instructions were specific. Take the child to an orphanage far away. Make sure she had no identification or way to trace her origins. He selected Sunshine Children's Home in Pennsylvania because his sister worked there as a nurse and could help falsify intake documents. Valerie wrapped her arms around herself, chilled by the clinical description of how her life had been stolen. Why didn't she just, I don't know, fire Elena and control my upbringing here? Why go to such extremes? According to Kruger, Martha believed you were too embedded in Richard's heart. Her exact words. Apparently, you needed to disappear completely for her plan to work. Torres glanced up from her notes. She also wanted Richard to always hope you might return someday, to keep him emotionally dependent on her support. A clean break, like death, might have allowed him to heal. She wanted him in perpetual limbo. "My God," Elena whispered, her hand covering her mouth. The calculated cruelty of it. Richard moved to Valerie's side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "What happens now?" "We've got a solid case," Torres replied. "Kidnapping has no statute of limitations. Given Green's age and lack of prior criminal record, she'll likely face 15 to 25 years. Kruger is looking at a reduced sentence for cooperation." After the agent left, silence settled over the study. The magnitude of what they had discovered. The years lost. The betrayal by someone so trusted was almost too massive to process. "I should have seen it," Richard finally said, his voice thick with self-recrimination. "All those years, the way she isolated me, controlled access to me even before you disappeared. She was possessive. I just never imagined she would go so far." "You couldn't have known," Elena said gently. "Martha was careful. She played the devoted maternal figure perfectly. I trusted her with everything. My home, my business decisions." Richard's voice broke. "My child." Valerie stood and embraced her father, feeling his shoulders shake with suppressed emotion. "It's not your fault. She fooled everyone." As they held each other, the last pieces of Valerie's fractured memory began to align. The sweet-smelling cloth over her face, waking confused in a car, a man she didn't know telling her to be quiet, the bewildering intake at the orphanage where no one believed her stories about a ranch in Texas and a father named Richard. Over time, those memories had faded, replaced by the identity they gave her. Stella, the abandoned girl with no past. But now, in her father's arms, with the truth finally exposed, Valerie Callahan was whole again. Outside the study window, darkness had fallen over Callahan Ranch. In the distance, police lights still flashed as evidence was collected from Martha's quarters. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more painful revelations as they pieced together the complete story of what had happened 19 years ago. But tonight, at least, the circle had closed. The architect of their suffering had been exposed, and for the first time since Valerie stepped into Madison Square Garden and sang her mother's song, she felt something like peace. 3 weeks after Martha's arrest, the Callahan Ranch was finally quiet again. The FBI agents had packed up their evidence. The reporters had moved on to fresher scandals, and the caretakers Richard had hired to replace Martha were settling into a comfortable routine. The sprawling property was beginning to feel like a home again, rather than a crime scene. Valerie stood on the veranda, watching the Texas sunrise paint the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold. The court had officially restored her legal identity. Valerie Catherine Callahan, though she still occasionally answered to Stella out of habit. Her few belongings from New York had been shipped to the ranch. The lease on her tiny apartment terminated after 19 years adrift. She was home. The adjustment wasn't seamless. She still woke sometimes in a cold sweat, fragments of memories churning through her dreams. The court-appointed therapist said this was normal, trauma surfacing as her brain processed the truth. Healing would take time. "Good morning," Richard said, joining her with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. He handed her one, prepared exactly as she liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of cream. "Thanks," she smiled, accepting the mug. "You're up early. Board meeting in Houston this afternoon." He leaned against the railing beside her. "First time back since everything." Valerie nodded. Richard had put his business on hold during the immediate aftermath of Martha's arrest, delegating responsibilities while he focused on helping Valerie settle in and cooperating with the ongoing investigation. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "About the meeting?" "No." He sipped his coffee. "About leaving you here alone for the first time. Perhaps a little. I'll be fine," she assured him. "Elena's coming over. We're going through more photo albums, filling in the blanks." Richard nodded, though concern still creased his brow. Martha remained in custody awaiting trial, but her threat about revealing Callahan family secrets had materialized in the form of documents anonymously delivered to several news outlets. Most were innocuous, embarrassing rather than criminal, but the resulting media attention had been intense. "The lawyers called last night," Richard said after a moment. "Martha's legal team has reached out about a plea deal." Valerie tensed. "What kind of deal?" "She'll plead guilty to kidnapping and conspiracy charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. Likely 12 years instead of 25. Given her age, it would probably still be a life sentence. And she'd make a full confession. No trial." Richard nodded. "The prosecutors think it's a good offer. It spares you from testifying. Gives us a guaranteed conviction." Valerie gazed out at the rose garden, still beautiful despite its dark associations. "What does she want from us in return? There must be something. A meeting." Richard's expression tightened. "With you specifically before she signs the deal." "No way," Valerie said immediately, wrapping her arms around herself. "I can't face her again. I told the lawyers exactly that." Richard placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't owe her anything, Valerie. Not a minute of your time. Not a word of forgiveness. Nothing." But as the day progressed, Valerie found herself unable to shake the conversation, while Elena helped her sort through childhood memorabilia. Her mind kept returning to Martha, the woman who had engineered her disappearance, who had robbed her of her identity and her family, who had manipulated her father for decades. "You're distracted today," Elena observed as they examined a scrapbook of early childhood photos. Valerie sighed. "Martha wants to meet with me as part of her plea deal." Elena's expression darkened. "You don't have to do that." "I know." Valerie traced her finger over a photo of herself at age 5, sitting on Richard's shoulders at what appeared to be a county fair. "But part of me wants to understand why. Really understand. Not just the explanation we've pieced together. Some things can't be understood," Elena said gently. "Some darkness doesn't make sense. No matter how long you stare at it." "Maybe." Valerie closed the scrapbook. "But there are still gaps in my memory. Questions only she can answer." The county detention center was a stark concrete building on the outskirts of San Antonio. Valerie sat in the visitor's room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, fighting the urge to flee. Richard waited outside, respecting her decision to face Martha alone, but insisting on driving her to the facility. The door buzzed, and a guard led Martha Green into the room. 3 weeks in detention had transformed her. Her silver hair, always perfectly styled at the ranch, hung limply around her face. The tailored clothes she favored had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit that seemed to swallow her frame. But her eyes, those were unchanged, sharp and assessing as they fixed on Valerie. "You came." Martha sat across the table, handcuffs clinking against the metal surface. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't," Valerie admitted, studying the woman who had orchestrated her abduction. It was strange seeing Martha in this environment, diminished, powerless, yet somehow still radiating the same controlled intensity. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Martha's voice had the same formal precision Valerie remembered, incongruous in these surroundings. I know you have no reason to grant me any favors. I'm not here for you, Valerie replied. Valerie, I'm here for me. I have questions. Martha nodded slowly. Ask them. I remember parts of that day now, Valerie began. You drugged me by the fountain? With chloroform or something similar? Ether, Martha corrected, clinical in her precision. Soaked in a handkerchief, I told you your shoes were untied, and when you sat on the fountain edge, I pressed it to your face. You struggled barely a moment before losing consciousness. The matter-of-fact description sent a chill down Valerie's spine. Then what? I carried you to the service gate where Kruger was waiting with his truck. You were small for 6. Easy to carry. I gave him the first payment and your backpack, which I'd packed with a few clothes, no identification, nothing traceable. Did you ever check on me? Make sure I was safe? A flicker of something, not quite remorse, perhaps discomfort, crossed Martha's face. Kruger provided proof you'd been placed in the orphanage. I sent money annually to his sister who worked there. She reported occasionally on your welfare. I knew you were healthy, being educated. How generous, Valerie said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. You kidnapped me, erased my identity, but made sure I had school supplies. Martha's lips thinned. I never wanted you harmed. I simply needed you gone, because I was in the way of your relationship with my father. Valerie leaned forward. A relationship that only existed in your mind. You don't understand. Martha's composure slipped slightly. I raised Richard from a boy. I was there when his mother abandoned him for her lover, when his father retreated into alcoholism. I was the one who made sure he ate properly, completed his schoolwork, grew into a man of substance. I shaped him. That doesn't make him yours, doesn't it? Martha's eyes flashed. I gave him everything. My time, my devotion, my entire life. Then Catherine swept in with her musical talent and pretty face, married him, died, and left behind a painful reminder that consumed all his attention. I was a child who'd lost her mother, Valerie said incredulously. Of course he focused on me. For 3 years, I watched you become his entire world. Martha's voice hardened. I became invisible, 40 years of devotion, erased by a child who had his eyes, her smile. I couldn't bear it. Valerie struggled to process the twisted logic, the decades of obsession that had culminated in such a monstrous act. Did you ever regret it? Even once in 19 years. Martha was quiet for a long moment. Not the act itself, she finally said, but perhaps the execution. I thought Richard would eventually move on, focus on his business, perhaps remarry. Instead, he remained frozen in his grief. That wasn't what I intended. What did you expect? Valerie asked incredulously. That he'd just forget about me. I expected him to heal, Martha replied. With my help, to build a new life. With me as his partner, not just his housekeeper. When that didn't happen, it was too late to undo what I'd done. The awful truth hung between them. Martha had orchestrated an unimaginable cruelty, not out of hatred for Valerie, but out of a warped, possessive love for Richard, a love so consuming that it had justified destroying a family. I don't expect your forgiveness, Martha said after a long silence, but there is something you should know, something that might bring you peace. Valerie steeled herself. What? Your mother's illness. It wasn't as sudden as Richard believes. She knew she was dying months before she told him. During that time, she made me promise to look after both of you. A bitter smile twisted Martha's lips. I kept half that promise, at least. Valerie stood, unable to bear another moment in the room. Is that supposed to make what you did better? That you betrayed my dying mother's trust along with everything else? No. For the first time, Martha's eyes reflected something like genuine remorse. It's supposed to give you closure. Now you know everything. As Valerie turned to leave, Martha called after her one last time. He has his daughter back now, she said softly. Perhaps you both can finally heal. Outside in the parking lot, Richard was waiting, concern evident on his face. When Valerie emerged, he stepped forward, searching her expression. Are you all right? Valerie took a deep breath of the fresh air, feeling as though she'd been underwater for too long. I think I will be. As they drove away from the detention center, Valerie gazed out the window at the Texas landscape scrolling past. Meeting Martha had answered her remaining questions, filled in the last gaps in the painful puzzle of her past. The woman would spend what remained of her life in prison, her obsession having ultimately destroyed her. Justice had been served. Now the more difficult task remained, learning to live again as Valerie Callahan, reclaiming the life that had been stolen from her 19 years ago. 1 year later, the Callahan Ranch glowed with the soft amber light of sunset as guests filled the garden for the inaugural benefit of the Valerie Callahan Foundation. White tents dotted the lawn, fairy lights twinkled in the oak trees, and the rose garden, now completely redesigned and replanted, formed a vibrant backdrop to the stage where Valerie would perform later that evening. At 36, dressed in a flowing blue gown that matched her eyes, Valerie looked every inch the Callahan heiress. Yet as she moved among the guests, greeting donors and families, there was nothing pretentious about her manner. The years of struggle as Stella had left their mark, a groundedness, an authenticity that served her well in her new life. Nervous about the performance, Elena appeared at her side, elegant in a silver cocktail dress. Now officially the Foundation's program director, she had spent the past year helping Valerie establish an organization dedicated to finding missing children and supporting those who, like Valerie, had been found after long absences. A little, Valerie admitted, touching the silver crescent moon pendant at her throat, the one her father had kept for 19 years, now returned to its rightful owner. But it feels right, Mom's song. Coming full circle. Elena squeezed her arm. She would be so proud of you. Across the lawn, Richard was deep in conversation with Gabriel Mendoza and Detective Miller, both of whom had become friends during the investigation and subsequent trial. At 59, Richard looked younger than he had a year ago. The weight of uncertainty lifted from his shoulders, replaced by the joy of having his daughter back in his life. The past 12 months had been a journey of rediscovery for them both. Valerie had moved permanently to the ranch, taking time to reconnect with her father and rebuild her identity. She'd explored her mother's musical legacy, discovering a treasure trove of compositions in Catherine's studio. With Elena's help, she'd pieced together more of her early childhood memories. There had been challenges, too. Martha's trial had been mercifully brief, thanks to her guilty plea, but the media attention had been intense. Valerie had declined to attend the sentencing hearing, choosing instead to send a written impact statement that the judge had read aloud. Martha received 12 years, a life sentence effectively for a woman of her age. James Kruger, in exchange for his testimony, received 5 years. His sister at the orphanage lost her nursing license and received probation for her role in the cover-up. The healing wasn't linear. Valerie still sometimes woke disoriented, momentarily confused about who and where she was. Richard occasionally caught himself looking for Martha when he needed something, a reflex from decades of dependency that would take time to unlearn. They both attended therapy, separately and together, working through the complex emotions of their reunion. "It's time," Elena murmured, gesturing toward the stage where the small orchestra had taken their places. "Your father's waiting to introduce you." Valerie nodded, drawing a deep breath as she made her way to the side of the stage. Richard stood at the microphone, handsome in his tuxedo, addressing the assembled guests. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice carrying across the garden. "A year ago, I experienced what many would call a miracle. The return of my daughter, Valerie, after 19 years of separation." A hush fell over the crowd as Richard continued. "During those years, I never gave up hope. I kept searching, kept believing that somehow my little light was still shining." His voice caught slightly. What I didn't know was that she had kept a piece of her true self alive through music, through a song her mother composed for her as a baby. He gestured toward the side of the stage. "Tonight, to launch the Valerie Callahan Foundation for Missing Children, I'm honored to introduce my daughter, who will perform that very song that helped bring her home. Ladies and gentlemen, Valerie Callahan." Applause rippled through the audience as Valerie stepped onto the stage. She embraced her father, then took her place at the grand piano that had been moved from Catherine's studio for the occasion. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment as she looked out at the sea of faces, donors, supporters, and most importantly, families who had experienced their own stories of loss and sometimes miraculous reunions. Then she began to play, the familiar melody of "Little Light on Silver Streams," filling the evening air. When she sang, her voice clear and strong, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. golden sun on silver streams, where my little boat still dreams, sailing toward the open sky, my little light, my lullaby. As the final notes faded, Valerie looked toward her father in the front row, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. The applause was thunderous, but it was his smile that mattered most to her, the healing it represented, the promise of a future reclaimed. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the staff was clearing away the last evidence of the gala, Valerie found herself drawn to the rose garden. The redesign had been her idea, a way to reclaim the space, to transform a site of trauma into something new and beautiful. Gone was the stone fountain where Martha had drugged her. In its place stood a different kind of memorial, a bronze sculpture of intertwined hands. Representing reunion and hope, the red roses that had dominated before were now complemented by varieties in every color, creating a rainbow effect that was especially striking in the soft landscape lighting. "I thought I might find you here." Richard approached. 2 glasses of champagne in hand, he offered one to Valerie, who accepted it with a smile. "Just taking it all in," she said. "It's been quite a year." "Indeed it has." He clinked his glass against hers. "To new beginnings, and to remembering where we came from," she added. They sipped in companionable silence, the Texas night wrapping around them like a comfortable blanket. Crickets chirped, a distant owl called, and the stars emerged one by one in the vast sky. "I received a letter today," Richard said eventually. "From Martha?" Valerie tensed slightly. What did she want? To confess something else. Richard's expression was somber. "She says she has terminal cancer, 6 months at most." "I see." Valerie processed this information, surprised at the complex emotions it stirred. Not satisfaction or vindication, as she might have expected, but something more nuanced. Did she ask for anything? Forgiveness? A visit? Richard shook his head. "No. She specifically said she wants nothing from us. She just wanted us to know that she's written a complete confession. Everything she did. Not just to you, but throughout her time with our family. She's given it to her lawyer with instructions to deliver it to me after her death. A final unburdening," Valerie mused. "Or her last attempt to control the narrative. Perhaps both." Richard set his empty glass on a garden table. "I've been thinking about what she said during her sentencing, that she believed she was protecting me, in her own twisted way. That doesn't excuse what she did." "No, it doesn't," Richard agreed. "But it helps me understand how someone I trusted completely could betray me so profoundly. Obsession distorts love until it becomes unrecognizable." Valerie nodded, thinking of her conversation with Martha in the detention center. She loved you in her way, possessively, destructively, but she did love you. "The most important thing," Richard said, placing an arm around his daughter's shoulders, "is that her actions didn't ultimately win. They cost us 19 years we can never recover. But they didn't destroy us. You found your way back." "I did." Valerie leaned against him, drawing comfort from his presence. "And now we're helping other families find their way back to each other, too." Above them, the stars shimmered in the Texas sky, the same stars that had glowed on Valerie's bedroom ceiling as a child. She still had that room, though she'd redecorated it to suit her adult tastes. The glow-in-the-dark constellations remained, however, a bridge between her past and present. From the main house came the faint sound of a phone ringing, followed by Elena calling that it was for Richard. Something about a potential new case for the foundation. "Duty calls," Richard said with a smile. "Coming. In a minute." Valerie watched as he walked back toward the house, his figure silhouetted against the warm light spilling from the windows. Alone in the garden, she took a final moment to reflect on the journey that had brought her to this point. The path from Stella back to Valerie hadn't been straightforward, but she was no longer caught between 2 identities. She was whole now, carrying the wisdom gained as Stella, and reclaiming the birthright that had always been hers. As Valerie, she reached into her evening purse and withdrew the silver pendant. Opening the locket portion that she'd discovered could be unfastened, inside was a tiny photograph of her as a child with both parents, Richard young and smiling, Catherine beautiful despite the illness that would soon take her life, and little Valerie between them, beaming at the camera. "I made it home," she whispered to the image of her mother, "just like in your song." Closing the locket, she returned it to its place around her neck and headed toward the house, where her father waited. where her future, so long deferred, was finally unfolding as it should have all along. Behind her, the garden's new bronze sculpture caught the moonlight, hands intertwined, never to be separated again.